So it's available now on Amazon Prime. It's prompted our big question of the day: is traditional TV viewing dead because of Netflix, Now TV, Sky box sets, and now Amazon Prime? And I'm delighted to welcome to Talk Radio the main man, in my opinion, of the three, because he's the one who's turned up. It's James May himself on Talk Radio. Welcome aboard, James.
Hello. I made a point of answering slowly, given your introduction. How are you?
Very well indeed. Were you nervous when you began filming the Grand Tour? Because it was a focus of huge interest because of certain things that had occurred.
All those things that happened. Yes. I don't know. I'm always, a part of me is always nervous about making TV because I don't want to make a mess of it. But I've always felt quietly confident that we would be okay. Because we already knew that people, there were a certain number of people who liked us, so it wasn't as if we were totally new to it, or the idea was totally new, a car show with three middle-aged blokes who muck things up a lot. It's the odds were good.
But by the same token, Top Gear had its own grammar that it evolved because of you guys, around you guys, but it was a programme with its own power. So you're effectively using you three, but from almost a standing start, creating something new. What's new? What's different about the Grand Tour? How does it work?
Well, the thing that's really new about it is that it's a touring show. We're now homeless, effectively. We're nomadic. We used to go to the same studio every week, and the audience would come to us. Now we go around the world and go to the audience, and we get actually a fairly localised audience. We get like a Californian audience, then we get...
You've allowed Americans into the tent?
Yeah, well, they sort of own it. So we couldn't really refuse. We've got some more Americans coming into the tent this weekend as well. The Americans make a good audience because it's quite easy for us to pick a fight with them and have a bit of fun.
And do you do the filming, the kind of car stunts, in the country where the big tent is?
Not necessarily, but some of them do work out that way. The films are, as in the old days, to be honest, the films are largely made in advance, and then we film the studios with the film inserts for the audience to watch in our tent. So it's sort of like a little car film club.
So I've opened the Sun newspaper today. They've given you 2 pages, even though effectively Amazon Prime is a competitor of Sky TV and stuff. And the first thing I see is a tank being blown up.
It's not the tank blowing up. The tank is blowing something else up.
That'd be my dodgy eyes then.
Could be, or it could just be a confusing picture. But
Can I interrupt?
Who's he?
It's John Holmes, by the way. He does the afternoon show normally.
Hello,
we don't normally see him in the morning because he's a creature of the night.
Yes, or afternoon, which is your night, Paul. Sorry, I've just walked in because I'm in early today because there's been some confusion, James. I'll be brutally honest with you. So what happened is, I know you've got James here now.
He's here now in front of you.
I am here.
And I thought he was on our show due to a mix-up. So what I thought I'd do, just to save everyone's time, is come in and join in with you, Paul, if that's all right.
And then sack your incompetent team for messing you about.
That's exactly right.
Excellent.
So we'll get that sorted afterwards.
Because you are a big Top Gear and now a Grand Tour fan,
I watched the first one this morning. It's because I got up especially early for the interview I was doing with James May.
Which you're now doing. That's fine. Take over.
And it's, I mean, the money's up there on the, you've seen it, the money's up there on the screen, James, that's fair to say, isn't it? That is an opening sequence of a half.
Yes, we do. I mean, we've, even before we pursued a policy of not spending money on, for example, wardrobe, as I'm sure many people have observed already.
Are you wearing the same shirt now you're wearing on that programme? It looks very similar.
I wondered if anybody would spot it.
You are, though, aren't
you? Well done, yes.
Thank you.
I've got 2 the same. I'm that professional. The money is going on the screen. Everybody's going on about the budget and how much we've been given. Most of the figures, in fact, all of the figures that I've read are wrong. But the budget is healthy. Let's not kid ourselves. And we are spending it on pictures and sound and location. So, yes, you saw the results.
Yeah,
it was.
It's like Mad Max.
Yes, there is a bit of Mad Max. I can be honest with you. I'm not going to give you a figure because I don't actually know. But that opening sequence was not cheap.
It sort of, Paul, did you think this? It sort of blew away the dust of Top
Except
Gear.
I've yet to see it, as I said to James. Had you been listening to Talk Radio on the way, and you'd have heard that honesty, because...
I was too busy having an argument.
It was available at 11:30 last night, and I'm in the land of Bedfordshire by then. I'm up the wooden hill and in the arms of Morpheus, or whoever will have me that night.
This is the trouble with streaming on-demand TV. The number of spoiler alerts you have to administer is constant, because there will always be somebody who hasn't seen it
That's
yet.
true.
So spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
And for those people, tough luck, like me. Let me ask a couple of quick questions that the listeners have texted in for us. Emery Merseyside said, James, don't take this the wrong way, but what is it about cars and you guys that gets you so excited? I've never understood it. Can you sum up the poetry of the automobile for Emma?
I won't take that the wrong way, because it's a perfectly reasonable question. Well, machinery in general gives me the fizz, as I call it, and cars they're not only quite interesting things to interact with, they're also, I've said it before as they're a window on the human condition, which is a terribly pretentious thing to say. But everybody
You
has
suddenly
a view on
become
cars.
Schopenhauer.
Well, not quite, but everybody's got a view on cars. If you took trains or motorcycles even, or cycling, there are groups with very, 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 very well-formed, very vocally expressed views on those things, but everybody has some sort of opinion about cars. They've either got one, or they ride in one, or they're annoyed by them, or they work in a job that depends on them, or whatever. So it's in the same way, like cooking. Everybody has a view on food because everybody eats. Everybody has a view on cars, and we spend a lot of our time actually mocking the car and turning it into a laughing stock.
Or blowing it up, in fact.
Or blowing it up, yeah, or crashing it, or trying to drive a totally inappropriate one on a ridiculous journey. That's coming up later in this series. So they're excellent material for making our sort of TV. But at a personal level, I love cars, but I also love motorcycles and bicycles and aeroplanes and
wine,
screwdrivers and wine and and lots of other things that don't mix very well.
Only when the other two that aren't as good as Paul has rightly said.
My assistants,
your assistants tend to travel in a pair when being interviewed, and I wonder, and I asked when
they?
Yes, did they not tell you that? Because I interviewed them once together, and I asked where you were, and they didn't really want to answer that, and I thought it was a bit embarrassing. And then now you're here, and they're obviously somewhere else, and I just wonder why you're.
We're all actually the same person. You never see us all together. You see. It hadn't really occurred to me that the other two travelling around.
It's just rude, isn't it?
It must just be nervousness.
There was a thing when Jeremy and Richard came in to.
They are deeply in love as well.
Well, they were making love throughout the whole interview, which was interesting. But Jeremy tweeted a picture of me standing next to Richard Hammond, and I'll be honest with you, it seemed perspective that I was shorter than Richard Hammond, which amazed both of them. Jeremy tweeted that, and it kind of went madly viral for a while because obviously he's got a lot of followers. So seemingly now.
And is he taller than you, Richard Hammond? The man they call the hamster.
I'm going to
in
say
which case, would they make you
James
the kind of?
James could answer this.
Yeah.
So you stood next to him.
Yes, I've got to be honest. I've never measured him.
No,
I need
roughly. Roughly.
Okay.
Is he kind of armpit height? Okay, so
Good radio, this. Yes.
I think you're slightly shorter than Richard Hammond.
What do you think?
I think you might be.
Oh dear.
Not a lot,
okay,
but
that's okay. He's only 11 years old. He's still growing.
So you sort of James's catchphrases. Cock.
There's not a lot in it, and Richard Hammond doesn't strike me as being particularly small. I mean, but to be honest, out of the three of us, I'm the only correctly proportioned.
Yeah,
that's fair.
So they both seem like freaks to me. But actually, I don't think Richard Hammond is unusually short.
And let me ask you the question we've been asking listeners this morning. It's a kind of a topic of conversation is about traditional ways of viewing TV, mainly because you're now on Amazon Prime, huge focus of attention. People watch Netflix. Are you somebody who watches TV when you're not making it? Do you watch it in the traditional way, following the schedules, or do you use your Netflix and your Amazon Primes and your Now TVs?
I think to be honest, it's a long time since I watched anything on the television when it was, as we used to say, on the television. News programmes, yes. Occasionally things like I watched Have I Got News for You recently when it was on, but a lot and sort of big football matches you'd watch when they were on. That's the appointment to view thing, the community spirit of television. But other things like documentaries, drama, and so on, you watch them when you want, the same way you'd read a book when you want. And it's not actually a very new idea. It's actually been going on since the invention of the video recorder. The first domestic one of which was available in Britain in 1972. How the hell do I know that?
That must have cost the same as a Ferrari or something.
Oh, it was very expensive. Yeah, it was a hideously expensive thing. Of course, these things always are when they're new. But the scheduling idea has been falling apart gradually since then. But I don't think the existence of TV channels are just about the scheduling of the programs. It's also about, and this is the thing that will take a while to disappear, if indeed it ever disappears at all. There is a type of programme on BBC Two. There is very definitely a type of drama that you're now getting on Amazon. Netflix, there's a certain type of historic collective stuff that's available on Netflix and that was available prior to that on those other, the earlier movie streaming. I can't remember what they're called now. The iPlayer has been around for a long time, so even with, what we tend to think of as an old-fashioned broadcaster like the BBC or ITV, they've both had internet catch-up services for a long time. So I think actually traditional television has been dead for about 30 years in the sense that I think you're talking about, but it won't disappear entirely, because if there's a US presidential election or the World Cup final. Those are things that are going to make society go quiet, because everybody goes in and everybody is watching
And also,
the
I
telly
suppose
at the
there's that
same
whole thing of
time.
social exclusion. I remember when I was at school back in the early 70s, there was one boy in the school whose mum and dad wouldn't let him stay up to watch Monty Python. A, they thought it was a bit strange and subversive, and B, it was on too late. And he was basically cut out of a whole round of conversation the morning after Monty Python.
I would imagine his life was completely ruined.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I wasn't allowed to watch. My parents really frowned, as a lot of people did back in those days, ITV, because it had too many ads on. And my mum didn't approve of Benny Hill because he ran around in high speed after women in bikinis.
And then evolved into Jeremy Clarkson.
It pretty well, he doesn't run around, but yeah. So, but yes, there was, and I was writing about this for a newspaper recently. There were things that were on when I was a kid, so Grange Hill or whatever, and you had to get home to watch it. And if you didn't watch it when it was on, you never saw it.
Gone forever.
It was gone forever, and you missed out on it. And as you say, it did sort of slightly ostracise you if it was a very popular thing, because people would be talking about it. The then equivalent of what we now call the water cooler conversation. You couldn't join in.
It only
because
happens
you hadn't
live
seen
now,
it.
doesn't it?
And then you
People-
became a murderer, basically. Because,
But it's that live conversation now. It's changed, hasn't it? That where people are double screening, as I believe they say, where hashtag that or whatever. And with the streaming programs, you're right, James. I think that in people are just catching up and watching it in different times. So when do you ever get the figures in for episode 1? When does it stop? Or
we
does
never get the figures.
Yeah.
That's a win-win for you guys, isn't it? That's it. You've got nobody to answer to. What a result.
I suppose it is. I'm not exactly sure of the business or commercial reasons for this. I think it might be a bit of a sort of gentleman's agreement amongst people like Amazon and Netflix and so on, that they won't get into a ratings war, because obviously they could. They know, because it's digital and it's on the internet, they know exactly how many people have watched it and when and for how long and how often they put, everything. It's all there. It must be in there somewhere. But they don't release it. They're not even going to tell us. We will never know how many people watch our show.
That's a shame, because you could renegotiate the next contract on the basis of that. You need to think about it.
I think we will know. Although they won't tell us in numbers, we will know how well it's done for them. I think.
So it's great to meet you, James. Thank you very much indeed. Do you want a final question, John? As this was meant to be your interview, you thought in your crazy world.
I'm simply going to thank you for letting me gate crash your interview. And thank James
this
for
is
letting me have as well. Look at us,
nauseating.
look at us. We'll have a man hug in a minute.
Move over, Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond and James May. We've got James May, I'm the ugly crumple-faced one. We've also got the
short one, yeah.
small but perfectly formed John Hunt, who's with you this afternoon, 1 o'clock till 4 o'clock. It's an amazing show. You've got to listen. Yes, the cheese has slipped off the cracker, but he's a top listener and a top fella. And that's before Yasmin Khan and the award-winning Drive Show. James May, continue good success, and thank you very much for joining us on the show today.